I honestly can't remember a time when I didn't value what I bring to my work, to my friends, to my community. I have moments of self-doubt sometimes. Do I know enough to contribute at this level that I want to contribute to? But I don't remember ever thinking that I don't have value to bring. This might be rooted in the praise I would get from my dad for getting good grades, or my mom always telling me that I can do anything I set my mind to.
Growing up, I was used to learning how to understand rather than remembering what I learned. But that changed with time. Competition, the desire to compete for the top spot in class set in my class. I had to change the way I learned. Now learning to understand, to remember, and to retell what the teacher taught me than to learn to understand. What was the point? I was learning to make my mates happy, to impress my teacher, and to make sure that I occupied the top spot. That made learning very difficult for me. I no longer enjoyed learning. I was now learning for grades and to compete with my classmates.
In my mom's side, I'm the oldest of 6 granddaughters. As a kid myself, I didn't think much about my influence in anyone else's lives. I just knew I loved those cute little babies and toddlers that I called cousins. In my teen years, being the first one to be allowed to use that teen title, I felt this warm and proud feeling that they were all looking up to me. I used to share my wisdom on how to sneak out to parties, what to do when your parents were fighting, or how to make peace with your best friend. As I became an adult, whatever this means, I started to think about my little cousins as not so little anymore. They became less cousins and more friends. The age gap became insignificant. We had our own lives in different cities, some of us in different countries, and we didn't talk that often anymore. We weren't in each other's lives anymore, that much, but the love we felt only grew bigger and bigger. Years ago, the 2 youngest ones moved with my aunt and uncle to Holland, and we didn't see each other for 4 years.
To thrive in school, I had to show up. I had to make an impression. And I liked the praise from my teachers that fed my desire to contribute. A desire that I'm sure, at more points than I could count, made me that annoying kid in class who always had something to add.
I see that.
Could I have succeeded if I had maintained the learning approach I used? Probably. But what changed? The fear of the other, my mates, the desire to impress my teacher, and which even when that didn't even help me in my learning process. What was the point? I lost my self-identity, and that affected my learning strategy.
Last June, I visited them for the first time. I spent 2 weeks in their house, and Yasmin, the oldest, and I shared her double bed the whole time. During those beautiful 14 days, we weren't two grown-up women visiting each other. We were just two silly kids at a slumber party. In one of those lovely nights that we spent chatting, laughing, and crying, Yasmin shared a story that stuck with me. She said, "Lou, one day when we were kids, you told me that I was smart, and I never forgot that. We were in the backseat of my father's car, and I was learning how to read. After trying really hard, I managed to read a street sign out loud, and you looked at me and said, 'Whoa, you're smart.' And I remember thinking, if Lou thinks I'm smart, I must really be smart." And she concluded saying, "That's one of my core memories. It really shaped how I think about myself to these days."
A quote that has always stuck with me is, "To a first grader, a third grader is a god." It highlights that we don't have to know everything. We just need to know a little more than the person who we're sharing our expertise with. And while this quote has helped me in times of doubt, I see now that it is also grounded in the idea that one person needs to know more. And I don't believe that to be true anymore. I see myself as a facilitator, a connector, and not so much of an expert. This idea of having to be an expert before you're qualified to contribute your expertise to others is something that I think really holds people back. And what is an expert anyway?
Should I blame myself, my teachers, or my peers? Maybe, but the system in which I lived made me do what I was doing, even when I was not enjoying it. I am in a system where knowledge is measured over competence. Students are not allowed to take risk. If you become a rebellious student, the system punishes you. But growing up, I decided to change. I found a way of competing with my peers, a positive way, but not to compare what I know with them. As a learner, I realized that my needs are not the same as others. So anytime I want to compare with myself with others, I look at why I started, my focus, and I tell myself, don't stop. Keep doing what you are doing.
I had to cry after hearing that. How is it possible that mini 9-year-old me casually said something that 15 years later was described as being a core memory? Thank God I was kind in that moment. Relationships have power. Words, wisdom, kindness, all of that have an immense and transformative power, just like assumptions, hate, and intolerance. Our knowledge can and in fact does affect lives when we least expect. So we better be intentional, kind, and passionate about what we put out there as researchers, activists, parents, citizens, and cousins.